Welcome back to the channel, Bridging the Gap, Student to Engineer. In this video, I'd like to give a shout out to all of those wonderful people who were involved in the Colorado School of Mines Girls Lead the Way event in January of 2024. This video is what I promised you when we were talking. So thanks for coming, thanks for supporting, and let's get started. So we're going to do a deep dive today into a school. I have talked in other videos about looking at schools, comparing schools, and how you might want to do that. So we're going to start with a little bit of that and then get into the data that Colorado School of Mines provides. So we talked in another video about the school selection funnel. I will provide a link to that here. Just to go over it quickly, if you're starting your initial research with a lot of schools, you're probably poking around at a lot of them, narrowing that down significantly to visit and or apply. You received acceptance to a few, and the focus of this video is really that section where you're doing your final research and visit again. You can definitely do this research earlier, but takes a little bit of time to get through the data from the schools. And if you do use this earlier in your process, I highly recommend going back to it at the end of your process when you're down at the bottom looking at your last few schools. So the considerations we talked about in another video were under 6 categories. These are really just ideas, but I wanted to go over them quickly. If you are interested in more information, definitely check out the video about selecting the right school. But those categories are characteristics of the school, location, cost, what kind of education you're going to get there, what kind of experiences you might be exposed to. And then the last one is career outcomes. So this video is really focused on looking at the career outcomes from the school. A lot of these other considerations are easy to find. You know where the school is, you can do research on the city, but how do you get the information about the career outcomes is something that is definitely available now to prospective students and parents, where it was not available as much when the parents' generation was looking at schools. So this may be something new if you haven't been into it. So let's get right into it. So the first thing to do is to find the information. The easiest way that I have found is to go on Google or use your favorite search engine. Look for the name of the school and student outcomes. So in this case, if you look in the search bar, it says Colorado School of Mines student outcomes. What that gives me is a number of different options, as per usual for Google searches. And what I want to do is make sure that I'm looking for data from the school. So most of these are mines.edu. That's a good indication that they're from the school. And also to make sure it's the latest. You'll see at the way down end of the spectrum here, or the screen here, it says the 2018-2019 annual report. That might be interesting to you, but what is the most interesting is the latest information. When I say the latest information, this annual report on here, January 12th, 2023, that is more than a year ago. But you have to keep in mind that the information is collected not immediately upon graduation, but 6 months, sometimes a year after graduation. So there is a delay of getting the information out, but it will be out there, and just look at the latest. And then if you ever do a Google search for a name of a school, you'll get what is on the right side of the screen, which is information that's just general about the school. So that's always a good place to just start when you're looking at schools. There's a lot more information if you scroll down on the screen than what I have provided here. Okay, so once you do your Google search, and then in this case, on Colorado School of Mines, you'll click on student outcomes, and they have a website. Most schools will have this. Most schools, all schools, want to brag about what their student outcomes are. And so the fact that this information is available for some schools makes all schools want to provide it to you. This is where they're showing you that what you're getting for your money, and really showing you that you're going to be successful if you go to that school. So in the case of Mines, they have a website, and then they also have this annual report that's a PDF, and that's what we're going to go through here. This is the PDF that Colorado School of Mines provides. There is a lot of data in here. If you're looking at other schools, you may not see the same data, or you may not see as much data. I really liked the layout of this one, so I thought it was a good one for us to go over here. I have provided some of the pages in this report. There are a lot more. If you're interested, definitely go look. I'm also focusing just on the undergrad data. I'm not on the master's and PhD. So if you're looking at those are definitely worth going and pulling up this report, following the process that I just outlined here. Okay, so what you're going to do next is look at the summary data. This is, keep in mind, marketing material. So this is what the school wants to show you. It is all really good information, and some of it you're going to want to remember for later, or you can flip back around if you need to. So what Mines is saying here is a lot of students use career services. This is written by the career services place. They are highlighting that they have been ranked 4th by salary potential. That's really good. Always look at the source of the data. So you'll see by salary potential has a 1 for a footnote. If you look at the bottom, it says best public colleges, payscale.com. So that's an interesting source of information. If you're looking at rankings, there are lots and lots and lots of rankings. There are lots of different ways of ranking colleges. So it used to be, we looked at US News and World Report and said, wow, that's the authority and we're going to go on. But there are a lot of different ways that colleges are ranked now. You can find some of them just by what the schools are referencing. But if you're interested in maybe who the 1, 2, and 3 are, and if those are others on your list, then definitely go check out the source for that information. And then all of the schools will give you a positive outcomes rate. In this case, for this year that we're looking at, it's 93% for Mines. And generally that's defined as students who are employed in industry, have gone into the military, have continued their education. And in this case of Mines, the footnote also said international students returning to their home countries. This one doesn't give time frame, but it is typically 6 months after graduation. So if you think about just this, 93% of students have gotten what they wanted out of going to that school within 6 months of graduating. That's a really good number. Of course, just like a lot of other things, past success doesn't guarantee future success, but it is a good indication that there are a lot of successful students coming out of here. And we'll get more into that when we get into the detailed data. Okay, 1,312 organizations recruited or hired at Mines. We will get into that in the detailed data, but 1,300 organizations is great, but it also needs to be compared to the number of students at the school. If this was a school of 35,000 students and 1,300 organizations were recruiting, that would be a pretty bad ratio, because you want a lot of organizations coming and recruiting, a lot of options for you as a student. And the data shows that a little bit. We'll get into that. $81,000 a year average starting salary. That's pretty impressive. What you'll find, though, is that Mines is all STEM. And so their number for average starting salary tends to be higher than schools that have a more diverse base of education that they're providing, just because different industries have different starting pay. So if you are looking and comparing Colorado School of Mines with another school, make sure you're comparing the engineering school or math and engineering or something like that when you're looking at the average starting salary, because different industries do different things. On the other hand, this is an indication that getting a STEM degree is financially a good decision. 93% of the students are coming out with a positive outcome, and they are very positive in their starting. Okay, so more summary data. Some of this is repeat, but what Minds is telling us is that there were 1,789 total graduates in the class of 2022. Again, 93% positive outcome rate. Again, an $81,000 starting salary. 19% continued to advanced education. So 1 in 5 graduates have decided to go into an advanced degree. So what can you read some things into this? Yes, if you have a school where only 5% are going on to grad school, and that's your intent, you might want to look at why that is. Maybe ask some questions. On the other hand, if 80% are going on to an advanced education, is the school focusing on producing graduate students rather than practicing engineers? Is a question to ask, because there are schools that are more focused on that type of engineering education rather than a practical hands-on. And then the last big item on here is a 64% accept positions in Colorado. When we talked about like choosing a discipline that's right for you and choosing your life path, it's really about focusing on what you want out of life and not necessarily what job maybe you're going to get there. Jobs are secondary to support your goals in life. But if your goal in life is to live in Colorado, then it seems that going to Colorado School of Mines is a really great way of doing that. 64% remained in Colorado after they graduated. You'll see a lot of those types of numbers in a lot of schools, particularly public schools like Mines. But it's something to think about, and they also show more data later that we'll get into. Okay, so detailed data. There is a lot of data here to look at. I will try to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. Feel free to pause the video and come back later, or look at different things at different times for what interests you. So starting the detailed data, this is undergraduate outcomes. I said in the beginning that I was just going to be doing undergrads. So 1,185 graduates. What I'm going to use that again when we talk about recruiting and people going into job fairs and those kind of things, because the ratio of organizations that are recruiting to the number of graduates is pretty significant in this organization. So we talked about positive outcomes. For bachelor's, it was 92, which is pretty close to the overall. And then if you look at the map, jobs accepted by location. Okay, so what they have said before and what they're saying again is 64% of grads accept jobs in Colorado, meaning that if you go to the school and you want to live in Colorado, you will be surrounded by Mines alums. You'll probably have really good alumni associations. You'll have people with name recognition. The same thing goes for Texas and California. But then if you go out east, what you're finding is there's some states that had no grads that went there. That's not that you can't go there. If your heart's desires to be in Maine, or maybe you're from there and you want to move home, that's totally fine. You can do that, but you will not have the name recognition or the alumni associations or those types of things surrounding you. A lot of times, particularly early in your career, people connect with you because they went to the same school as you, or they have some other connection like that. And so it's just something to be aware of. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it's less common for grads of Mines to move to a number of the states in the East. Okay, and then I want to focus on the right side of the screen. This is really good data and a really good set of data that can help you make some decisions. So I'm going to zoom in on that. Excuse me. Okay, so I said Mines was a STEM school. They have their departments all listed here because they don't have 200 majors, it's easier for them to list that and to provide this information. You may have to do a little bit more digging on other schools, but this is what we have, so we're going to go through it. So if I know exactly what I want to major in, it's pretty easy to just zero in on that and say, I've always dreamt of being an environmental engineer, or I know that that's going to support the lifestyle that I'm looking for. So I can just look at environmental engineering and pull through the data. On the other hand, if I'm not sure, then this is a good way of comparing some of the various majors that I could go into and what kind of outcomes that I might have if I went to those majors. So I started with environmental. Let's just go back to that. Of the 31 graduates on the far right, there are 31 undergrads that graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Engineering in the class of 2022. They've taken the data from those people, and they're providing you what it is. So we'll go through what each data point is. So low salary. So of the 31 people, they all got, or 93% of them got jobs or went to grad school. So of the ones that got jobs, they had actually a pretty small distribution of starting salary. So the one that accepted the least pay made 64.8 thousand a year. If you go over a couple columns, you'll see that the person that made the most is making 80,000 over annually right out of school. So environmental engineering, I can expect that when I get out, I'm going to make probably somewhere between $65,000 and $80,000. The most likely is somewhere in the middle. You can see average and median. I like to use median more because that is the number that half of the people are above and half are below. So that's not your average number, but that is the middle of the data set, which is it's not necessarily your most likely, but you'll be close to that. So if I'm doing some calculations on whether or not going to mines makes sense for me financially and what I can expect coming out of the school, and I'm going to major in environmental engineering, I can expect to make probably $67,000 a year starting. And so that's a good way of comparing other schools. Keep in mind, if you're comparing a school in California where the cost of living is higher, or New York City, or something like that, these numbers will be higher because there are going to be more people who stay in those high cost of living areas. But that doesn't mean that that they're going to be better off. So definitely consider that when you're comparing schools. But this may be a good way of seeing that if I graduate from mines, I may be making more or less than some other place. This is a good conversation to have when you're talking about, like, do I go to the local state school or do I go somewhere farther away? There's going to be a difference in the amount of money you have to invest in that degree, and there may be a difference in your outcome, or there may not be. It's definitely something to look at. So in other videos, we'll get through other schools, and if you want to hear this data for other schools, please let me know in the comments. But we'll just continue to go through this. I think this is going to end up being a long video, and I hope that you find it helpful. If you have any questions as we go through, or if you get to the end, please let me know and we will answer them. Okay, so I picked on environmental engineering. That was a pretty small range of incomes, but let's just go up to chemical engineering. That's a much larger range. So there were 155 graduates. If we go to the far right column, 90% of those had positive outcomes. So that's a little bit lower than the average for the school. We don't know why at this point, but it is a little bit lower. So something to consider. And then the low salary is 39 and the high salary is 150. It's easy to just zoom over to the 150 and go, oh man, I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to go, major in chemical engineering. But you have to consider what kind of circumstances surround those salary differences. And also look at, again, the median. So the median is 72.8. That's not that far off from the median for environmental. So it may be that, the difference between the two majors is not significant and you should just follow your heart rather than the money. But well, okay, we'll get into more of industries and those kind of things coming up later. But if you have any trouble reading this, or if you need some help or thoughts about it, let me know. One other thing that you can get out of it, rather than just looking at each department or each major, is the number of graduates. So mines will say, I offer all these programs and they are all great, and they're, a lot of great things that we're looking at. But look at the difference in the number of graduates in each of the programs. We've got biochemistry with 7. They didn't have enough data to provide, but compared to like 202 in computer science, and even bigger mechanical engineering 305. These are an indication of how big these schools are, or departments, how big the departments are, how big the majors are. If they're talking about, I'm in a small major, I'm in a small department, and we get a lot of one-on-one help or one-on-one attention from the professors, that's a lot more likely in these programs that have smaller numbers. On the other hand, you're not going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of friends with the exact same major as you. And so it's really a preference on what you think is important to read out of the number here. But it is a good indication of the size, and not necessarily the prestige, none of those kind of things. It's just the actual number of students who are majoring in it. Okay. One thing to note, because it will come up later, is Mines does not have an aerospace engineering. They have an option to focus on it. And what I understand is a lot of mechanicals do that. So there is a mechanical, the number for mechanical is kind of high, or it is the largest, but we'll go into the impact of that in a little bit. Okay, so again, detailed data available. And this is jobs by industry. So if I love planes, is Mines a good place to go for me? I mean, why would something called Mines be great for somebody who wants to go into aerospace aviation? Well, when I look at this jobs accepted by industry, what I see pretty quickly is the largest section is aerospace, defense, and aviation. So if I'm interested in that, that is a really great this will be a really great opportunity for me. Same thing for energy, oil and gas. The oil and gas industry recruits heavily at Mines, and they hire a lot of these grads. So take a look if this kind of information is available to you. Study it, particularly if you know that you're interested in something particular. It's good to look at. On the other hand, if you're looking at Mines and considering it and you never thought about maybe aviation as an option, that's something to look into. And we'll talk about the specific companies that are in that and how you can do some research. But it may just open you up to some things that you hadn't thought about before. All right. Okay. So I get a lot of questions about internships. How can you tell? The opportunities for internships or undergraduate research and those kind of things. Most of these schools will give you data on this because it's important. Part of the reason it's important is because you need real world experience. And part of the reason it's important is because it's a really great way to finance a lot of your education. So I have created videos about interning. I will provide a link here. So click on that if you're interested in why you should intern and if you should intern. But assuming you've gotten to the point where you know how important it is, then looking at this kind of information is really good. So in this one, if we just look at some of the data, in Mines, 69% of bachelor's students graduated with technical work experience. 69 means that 31% didn't. To me, that's not a great number. As a hiring manager, if somebody graduates with no experience, I have a much harder time looking at them than if they graduated and they had 2 or 3 internships for the summer, or even a co-op experience where they're working at the same place several times. So it is important to get this exposure. What it's showing you, though, is that Mines has that. I would say probably the 69% might be lower than typical. I'm just guessing at this right now. Because COVID was right in the middle of that, and that kind of disturbed people's ability to get some of this experience. But this is important. One thing when you're talking about financing your education is in the lower left corner, how much money you would make. So this is average intern salary. If you're multiplying that by, say, 10 weeks for the summer and 40 hours a week, that's a significant amount of money that you could be using towards paying for your education or putting in the bank or whatever you need to do. So intern salary is important, but I talk about that more in the intern video. So go over there if you are interested in more. One thing I want to point out in the lower right is the years of experience. They the number of, or the percent of first year students getting a internship is pretty low here. I strongly encourage everybody to at least try after your first year. Keep trying. Some places won't hire you until a little bit later, but it's really excellent if you can get that experience. And then contrasting, I think, somewhat the data about recruiting and where the graduates have gone, the technical experience by location covers more states. This one doesn't say percent, so there's that's a little bit different, but it shows you that you don't have to stay local. You can go anywhere. Okay. All right. So next step number 4. This is showing diversity data. I think you can get it for pretty much every college and university. This is a lot of words on this slide, but I want to just talk about diversity as a consideration and why maybe it would be important for you to look at this. So regardless of where you come from and the diversity of where you grew up, you will be exposed to a lot of people who aren't like you, or a lot of people who are like you as you get into your career. The more diversity you can expose yourself to when you're younger and as you're learning, the better off you're going to be. It's not because people look like you or look different than you specifically, but it is because the more diversity you are around on things that are easy for us to measure. Here they have gender, racial, and ethnic groups. The more you can be around different people in different groups, the more you're going to be exposed to people with different experiences. So, and understanding their experiences and understanding how you can interact with people who aren't like you is really, really important. It's a very important skill to learn. And when you come out of school having surrounded yourself by people who are or are not like you, it can be very powerful, and it can be very helpful to you as a person and your personal and professional growth. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about here, and we're going to talk about it for a while, is recruiting. And like I've said, the reason you go to school is to get a job. So the recruiting piece of this is very important. Okay, so we talked about earlier about how there were 1,100 or so grads at Mines during this period. 1,100 students graduated, yet 1,300 organizations recruited. So you're looking at some really, really strong numbers. These are um, organization numbers and job numbers exceed the number of undergrads that are graduating. Now, these jobs include the intern and co-op jobs posted that you see on the lower right, but it's still a very healthy number. And so what you can read from this is that there is a high demand for students that are graduating from these programs. There are a lot of organizations that value a Minds education, and they are spending time at recruiting events, at career days, doing a lot of things that they'll provide us a little bit more detail in the beginning or in the next couple slides. But it indicates a really strong demand for graduates and a strong interest from companies. Okay, so again, more data. Um, Similar to the donut chart that was a couple pages ago that talked about where students took their accepted jobs after they graduated. There's a similar donut chart here showing you what kind of industries are recruiting. The reason I focus more on that one is because if you see aerospace, defense, and aviation is pretty small in the number of companies, but it is huge in the number of students that are that they're recruiting. So I think it is important to look rather than look at this one, to look at the one about where students are actually taking their jobs. So career days, a lot of schools, including Minds, talk about their career days and their recruiting events and those kind of things. They're very important. If you don't find information about from a school about career fairs and organizations and events sponsored by companies, then dig more or look elsewhere, because really this is what it's about, is coming to the school and finding graduates is really what we want companies to do. So in this case, the employers attending career day 625. That means if you walk into a career day, you're going to have a lot of opportunities, a lot of options. If you think to your days where you're going to college fairs, this is going to be a similar type thing. People have tables and they talk about the opportunities they have. 3,800 participating students and 600 companies standing there waiting to talk to them and anxious to talk to them. That's a very good ratio. So great numbers for Minds. And I mentioned this already, but definitely look at the industries that are represented. If you're interested in a specific kind of industry, then you can get an idea of what kind of industries. You can also compare this to the numbers of graduates in each of the majors, and see maybe where they fall. Mechanical was a huge number, but there's no mechanical industry. So where do those people go? They go to a variety of industries, where some of the majors are more specific. Mining, for example, mining engineering, there's a mining industry. Not to say that you would have to go there. You might also fall into oil and gas or somewhere else, but definitely compare the numbers of grads, the industries they're going into, the number of jobs they get. All of those things can give you an indication of what's going to happen when you get there and you're trying to make that last leap out of school and into a real career. Okay, so this is more information about recruiting. It's an indication that companies come and they do on-campus interviews. That is very, very nice when you're a student. If you're in school and you're trying to get through classes, but you're having to fly all over the place to do interviews, that's very distracting and can actually cause you to fail classes and not graduate. I know somebody that happened to, so please don't let that happen to you. So the more that you have companies coming to a school and doing things on the school, at the school to try to recruit people, the less you have to do and the less time you have to take out of your education to go make those things happen. And then on the lower left, 103 employer information sessions. I have talked about this in other videos about looking at what employers are connected to the school. I will provide a link to that in choosing your right school, and this is just an element of it. But go to employer information sessions. I mean, this one, 103, you're not going to be able to go to 103 in a year. But go to as many as you can, especially if they provide free pizza or free dinner. That's always a good thing, a good way to attract students. But it's good for students to just show up and talk to those employers, even if you don't really think that they are a great fit for you. You might find out some really interesting information that you didn't have. Okay, so Minds provides you with the list of those 1,300 organizations we talked about at the beginning. I haven't seen a lot of schools do this, but they all provide their data in a different way. So in the video about choosing the right school, I talk about looking at what companies are affiliated or partnered with the school and using that to um, well, find out about more companies than you ever knew about, but also just to understand what kind of things happen and what kind of things you could do with degrees. So the Minds data is extensive. This goes on for 4 pages. If you are interested in this, definitely go to their website, which I have as my source in the lower left here. Because this is a huge list. This is a lot of companies really valuing students that uh, have educations at Minds, which is really great. Another thing to note, on this last page, they've got 5 companies that have sponsored them more than others, presumably. They are partnering with and supporting the school in a way that the school is providing you larger logos so you can see them. If you look at those 5 companies, 4 of the 5 are really focused on energy, oil, and gas. Those companies most likely recruit a lot of people from Minds. It is worth their time and their money to have the relationship with the school and to pay a little bit extra to get their name out there. On the other hand, Nevada Gold Mines may or may not be a company that you ever heard of, and so it's a good way for them to get their name out there, and also an indication that it's worth their time and their money to come to Minds and recruit students. All right, so that is the deep dive into Colorado School Minds. I expect to be doing more of these. I hope this was helpful. If you didn't make it through the whole video, I hope you come back, have been able to come back and watch the rest of it. If you have any questions, if anything was confusing, please let me know in the comments. And otherwise, like this video if you thought it was helpful, subscribe to the channel to get more of these, and make sure you turn the notification bell on so that you know when another one of these comes out. Thank you for coming today and have a great day.